All right, so we're diving deep into some recent cybersecurity news here.
Yeah.
You sent over a bunch of reports from March 2025, and
Right.
I think our goal here is to really break down like what are the big threats out there right now, and what
Yeah.
do people need to know to sort of stay safe in this digital world?
That's the goal. And I mean, what really jumps out at me just from, kind of scanning through all this stuff is how diverse it is.
Yeah.
You've got, nation state actors doing espionage. You've got criminals trying to steal your money with ransomware,
Mm-hmm.
big ad fraud campaigns, vulnerabilities, and like all kinds of software. You name it, it's out there.
So let's maybe start unpacking some of this stuff.
Okay.
One of the things that you flagged was a Google Chrome zero-day vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
This one was called CVE 2025-2783.
Right.
And this is one that was apparently being exploited by Russia for espionage.
Yeah, that's right.
What is it about this particular vulnerability that kind of makes it stand out to you?
I think the fact that it was a 0 day being exploited by a sophisticated actor like Russia, I mean,
Yeah.
that's really significant. It shows that, these attackers are constantly finding new ways to get into systems, and they're doing it faster than the vendors can patch them.
So before Google even knows about it,
Exactly.
Russia's already in.
That's right. And in this case, they were able to actually bypass Chrome's security sandbox,
Yeah.
which is that isolated environment that's supposed to, kind of limit the damage that an attacker can do. And they
Right.
were using this to target people in the media, education, and government organizations.
Through like phishing and things like that.
Exactly.
So, it wasn't just browsers that were at risk here. You also flagged a couple of vulnerabilities in Cisco's smart licensing utility.
Mm-hmm.
These were CVE 2024-2439 and CDE 2024-2440.
Yep.
And these were also being actively exploited.
Right.
So, for people who aren't super familiar with Cisco, how big of a deal are these?
Well, Cisco is like, the backbone of a lot of corporate networks.
Yeah.
So if you're in an organization that relies on Cisco for like your networking infrastructure, you could be in trouble.
Right.
These vulnerabilities specifically could let attackers get administrative access to systems and steal sensitive data.
And then there was a vulnerability in a WordPress security plugin
Right.
called WP Ghost.
Yeah.
This was CVE 2025-26909.
Right.
And this one could potentially let attackers run commands on over 200,000 websites.
Yeah, over 200,000. And that's a lot considering how much of the internet runs on WordPress.
Right, it's a huge percentage.
It is. And this particular vulnerability, it's what we call remote code execution. So
Okay.
basically it means an attacker can run any code they want on your server.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's bad news. All right, well, so
Yeah.
switching gears a little bit.
Sure.
We talked about nation-state attacks. We talked about some software vulnerabilities. But one of the things that, I think is always top of mind for people is ransomware.
Definitely.
And there was a new variant of Medusa ransomware that the FBI was warning about.
Yes.
And this one is particularly nasty because it uses what's called double extortion.
Right.
Can you maybe just explain to folks what that means and why it's so dangerous?
Sure. So, with traditional ransomware, you get your files encrypted
Okay.
and you can't access them until you pay the ransom. But with double extortion, they also steal your data
Yeah.
before encrypting it, and they threaten to release that data publicly if you don't pay.
Even if you have backups.
Even if you have backups, right? So it's like an extra layer of pressure to force you to pay.
And this particular variant was targeting Gmail and Outlook users specifically.
That's right. So that means potentially millions of individuals and businesses are at risk.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about something even bigger.
Yeah.
The Bybit cryptocurrency exchange got hit for a whopping $1.5 billion.
Yeah, I know it's hard to even fathom a number that big.
It's unbelievable.
It is. And the attackers were allegedly North Korea's Lazarus Group.
Yeah. Now, how does something like that even happen? Like, how do you steal $1.5 billion in cryptocurrency?
Well, it appears they started by breaching one of Bybit's suppliers.
Okay.
And from there, they were able to get access to Bybit's systems and alter wallet addresses.
Wow.
So basically, they redirected funds that were supposed to go to Bybit's customers into their own wallets.
It's a pretty sophisticated operation.
Yeah, very sophisticated. And it really shows how vulnerable even these big exchanges can be.
Yeah. It's a reminder that, no matter how secure you think you are, there's always someone out there who's trying to find a way in.
Exactly.
All right. So, we talked about some pretty serious threats here, but one of the things that you also flagged was this vapor ad fraud campaign.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which involved over 300 malicious Android apps on Google Play.
Yeah, and we're talking about over 60 million downloads.
That's 60 million.
60 million downloads. These apps, they're disguised as like legitimate apps, games, utilities, things like that. But they were actually loaded with malware that would bombard users with intrusive ads
Right.
and steal their information through phishing attempts.
So maybe not as dramatic as a nation-state attack.
Right.
But still a big deal for people who are affected by this.
Absolutely. It might not make the headlines, but it's definitely a threat that people need to be aware of.
Now, kind of taking a step back and looking at the big picture here,
Yeah. Okay.
there were some concerns raised about potential workforce reductions and budget cuts at CISA, which is, of course, the U.S. cybersecurity agency.
Right.
Given everything that we've talked about, what kind of impact could that have?
Well, CISA plays a really important role in protecting our national infrastructure from cyber attacks.
Yeah.
So any reductions in their resources could really hurt their ability to do their job effectively.
And then on the international front, Hong Kong introduced a new cybersecurity law for critical infrastructure.
Yeah, that's right.
Which requires operators to strengthen their systems and report incidents within 2 hours.
Yeah, 2 hours. That's a tight window.
Really tight.
It is. And there are some pretty hefty fines for companies that don't comply.
So I guess the takeaway here is that cybersecurity is becoming a bigger priority for governments all over the world.
Definitely. They're realizing how important it is to protect critical infrastructure from these kinds of attacks.
So March 2025 was a pretty wild month in the world of cybersecurity.
Yeah, no kidding.
We saw everything from sophisticated nation-state attacks to, widespread ad fraud campaigns.
Right.
And I think the main takeaway for our listeners is that these threats are constantly evolving.
Yeah, and they're not going away anytime soon.
They're not going away anytime soon. So what can people do to protect themselves?
Yeah.
What are some of the key things that they should be thinking about?
Well, I think the most important thing is to be proactive.
Okay.
Don't wait until you're already compromised to start thinking about security.
Right.
Keep your software updated, be careful about what you click on, use strong passwords, and consider using a security solution like a VPN or an antivirus.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that security is not just about technology, it's also about behavior.
Right.
Being aware of the threats and taking steps to mitigate them.
Absolutely.
So, with all these threats out there,
Yeah.
and with the landscape constantly changing, what are some practical steps that our listeners can take right now to better defend themselves in this digital world?
That's the question.
Yeah, that's the question.
For everyone to consider after this deep dive.
Thanks for listening.